Welcome, Psychology 100 students. I'm looking forward to an amazing semester with you. Actually, this will be my first full semester being taught remotely. And I wanted to have an introductory video so you'll get a chance to have some of your questions answered. Perhaps I'll inspire more questions. One thing you should know is you should never apologize for a question because I actually enjoy answering questions, preferably in person. I'm an in-person kind of individual, but this is the method that we're faced with at this point in time, so we'll do the best we can to make this the best experience for you. Now, a couple tips about this, this new environment of teaching. I wanted to show my credentials. Here are my everything from my elementary school degrees to junior high, high school, my bachelor's of science, as well as my master's in science. I'm also a member on campus of one of the founding members of Psi Beta. If you're interested in the honorary psychology club, the psychology club, or Psi Beta, which is the honorary portion of it, you should contact me and I'll give you the information who to contact, who the advisor is. I'm also a member of Phi Theta Kappa, another honorary society on campus. There are a number of honorary societies. I always tell people to check into the organizations on campus as well as the honorary societies because we all need a feather in your cap. Now, what I mean by feather in your cap is we can all wear the same cap, but if one has a feather, they stand out. And of course, now with people just kind of applying, maybe not even being able to visit physically some of the institutions they're thinking about transferring to, you want to have as many feathers in the cap as possible on your transcripts as well as your statement of interest. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at the syllabus and you can see how this class is being set up. Hopefully you've had a chance to read my biography. Now, a couple tips about me throughout the lectures, and I'll be coming to you via video, not live, but via video, is if you're familiar with the Vietnamese soup pho, which is one of my favorite soups, along with pozole and menudo, things of that nature. There was a restaurant in Huntington Beach with the name of, I'm not sure if it's still there or not, but with the name of What the Pho. And when my kids were small, they heard that name and they started running around yelling, "What the pho, what the pho?" And I told them, kids, don't say that because people may not know what you're referring to. But I use that expression from time to time so you know what I'm talking about. Here you see an ink pen. I have an ink pen collection. These are expired ink pens that I've gone through over the years. At some point, I'll maybe show you a picture of containers. I'm currently on number 660 when it comes to the ink pens. When I started teaching full-time at Santa Ana College in the fall of 2001, I started saving all the ink pens that I ran out of ink, grading your papers, grading your exams, etc. So I happen to be on number 660. I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan, not from the suburbs, from Detroit. And one of the last things, been teaching since the fall of 1990. Now, I got involved in the teaching profession after 19 years of being a clinical limited license psychologist in the state of Michigan, where I was born and raised. And that was one of my goals when I graduated from college, is to do some teaching. Little did I know that my first experience of teaching didn't work out because it was an off-campus class and only 2 people came the first day. They invited me in the fall of 1990 to teach a class at Lansing Community College, and I instantly loved it. It was instant attraction. So I've been doing that ever since. Now, the last thing I wanted to point out was, I'm sure you've read this in the biography of myself, is I am Spider-Man. Now, students used to laugh a lot at that when I would tell them, primarily because they just didn't accept that as a fact. They were kind of used to maybe one cartoon version of Spider-Man or perhaps one movie version. And since that time, you've been introduced to the Spideyverse and you realize, oh my goodness, there's all kinds of Spider-Man. And you see all different types of Spider-Man all over the place. Well, I'm one of them. And so how did I become Spider-Man? Well, just wanted to show my shirt there. This is from Spider-Verse. I became Spider-Man primarily because when I was a kid growing up in Detroit, my father would take us to the Mexican barber. Now, we called him Mexican barber because he was a barber and he was Mexican. And as a small child, I would just look at the comic books. I couldn't quite read at that point in time, but I would just look at the pictures and you can kind of figure out what's going on. Well, as I got older, I started reading the stories. And I don't know if this ever happened to you, where you read something or you heard the lyrics of a song and you realize, oh my gosh, that's the story of my life. That's exactly how I felt. This character of Peter Parker, smart kid, gets bitten by a radioactive spider, and now he's got all these powers, right? He doesn't really want to be a superhero. He just wants to make some cash and impress a girl. Well, he fails to stop a crime in progress because he figures it's none of my business. And that ultimately leads to the death of his father figure, his Uncle Ben. So now he's obligated to take care of his Aunt May and to pay respects to his Uncle Ben by making up for his lack of stopping the criminal by becoming a crime fighter, right? Not a police officer. He's a superhero crime fighter. He's outside the realm. So there are many different Spider-Man. Here's one in particular. This is the first Latino Spider-Man. This is Spider-Man 2099, Miguel O'Hara, who actually got his costume from Mexico, where it's part of his origins, if you're familiar with that character. But I'm just one of the Spider-Man, and I've made a deal with all my psychology classes at Santa Ana College. If during any exam the class gets a B average, I will wear the mask for that class. If at any time the class gets an A average, which actually happened during this summer, which I taught, spring semester, which I taught partly remotely, I'll wear the entire costume. I'll send a picture or I'll do a video with the entire costume. It's only happened once in my lifetime. I am happily married. Here's a picture of my wife and I, right? I've got 3 kids, and we just adopted a little black lab, mixed dog, who is keeping me up, keeping the whole family up, keeping us on our toes. Hasn't got all her shots yet. She's about 10 weeks old, so can't take her for walks or anything, so just kind of confined to the backyard. So if I look a little tired, you know why. I'm not bored of what we're doing. I'm just worn out from a little dog. What you can't see is the desk I'm working on. You can see a little bit in the background here, but you can't really see the desk where the computer is. I wanted to show you, this is some of the stuff on my desk that's right behind this computer screen, which I'm talking to right now. If you notice, there's quite a few action figures. I do collect action figures, monsters, and of course, Spider-Man and things like that. I just consider these action figures kind of like you, my class. Not that you're monsters or you're Oogie Boogie or anything like that. I just figured it's kind of nice to have somebody looking at me while I'm lecturing during this time. Now, a few tips for the success in this class. My advice to you is to take notes, not only to turn in from the chapters, and people always ask, well, what kind of stuff should I do? And I said, write down the stuff you think is important, definitions, etc. But also take notes from the videos I take or I produce. Because from the videos, at least half of the questions, if not more, are coming from the videos on the exams. And of course, I'll give you reviews. I'll actually give you the answers to the exam in advance, at least things to study for. So if you take notes on the videos, you don't have to go back and watch them again and again, right? Also, more is better. One of the things I realized during spring semester is that students didn't always do well on my 10-question short answer essay exams, primarily because they didn't really think of the answer. They didn't answer the question completely. They didn't put enough detail in there. So more is better for your papers, for your notes, for your exams. Right? This is my favorite class to teach. This is not my favorite method of how to teach it, but this is my favorite class. So I'm looking forward to an amazing summer semester. I can't honestly say this is exactly the same class as I teach during the 16-week semester, but it's pretty close, and it's squashed into 6 weeks. So if you notice, if you've had a chance to look at the course outline, you notice some things due almost every day. And when does it due? At the beginning of class. My advice to you is to get the notes, the paper, the autobiography, do the exams before the deadline. I can't tell you how many students waited to the last minute, try to get it in, and what would happen? Internet's not working, it's too slow, or they just forgot. As soon as you get a chance, jump on the chapter, send it in. Do the file, send it in to me. I will read it. I will return it and say, I'll send you a note saying stamped 1 with the exclamation point. That means you get credit for chapter 1 or 2 or 3, but not 13. We're not doing chapter 13. My birthday was just yesterday. I was born on the 13th, and my mama said it was bad luck, but that's her opinion. But anyways, earlier is better. There's just too many things that can go wrong, as you could see in this world right now, right? So if you turn stuff in, you won't be so stressed out like, oh my gosh, I am so behind, I'm way behind, I'm losing points for all the chapter notes not submitting. If you find yourself in that bind, I don't want you to despair. After the first exam, I provide an extra credit opportunity that's worth 40 points. And I'll get into more detail when that time arises after exam 1 results. There's 50 points of extra credit total for the entire semester. So for example, let's suppose that you go on vacation. I don't know where, but you're on vacation and you completely forget about taking the exam or submitting the paper or whatever it might be the case. Don't despair. Just do all the extra credit and you'll be just fine, right? Even if you don't miss anything and you still want to do the extra credit, you can do that. I had a handful of people spring semester that didn't have to even take exam 4 because they did so well on everything else and they did the extra credit. They were good. So looking forward to interacting with you more.